Hey guys, in the previous session we went through the blocking out of the human head. In this 13-part series of how to sculpt a character, we will be doing this from beginning to end, head to toe. That is the mission objective. And without any further ado, let's jump into the second part of this one, where we'll be adding the detailing to the face and hopefully getting it to look fantastic. So let's go. Hey guys, okay, well, let's get into the second part of the tutorial of how to sculpt the human head. And previously we did the blocking out, which is the same blocking out. As you can see, nothing has changed. It's the exact same mesh. We'll be doing this as a follow-through. We'll be working on it together. We're working as a team here to get this job and project done. So let's get right into it. So now we already have our mesh here. I said I was going to show you a different method for getting in a little bit more detailing back into this. So just for the purposes of that, let me actually do this. As unpreferable as it is, I'll just get back into it and just show you the form. Okay, so there we are. As you can see, everything is exactly as it was prior to that, and this is without the dynamic topology. Let's go into edit mode. As you can see, all of these are quads, and this method is a method that keeps everything as quads as you apply it. So with our sculpt in orthographic front view form, it's not really necessary to do it this way. It's just better for the tool, because you'll be able to see exactly how much topology and detailing you are adding to it. So yeah, there's our general form of the head without too much detailing. Let's just reduce this in and give that slight indentation for the temple area, for the dip, for the little bit of muscle structure that comes into there, just to help keep the general form together. Where we have our nerves attaching to the muscle structure within the mesh, and just bring our cheeks in. Maybe let's keep them out. Actually, let's give them a bit of an absurd jawline. Just quickly drag these in. This is to get a form. Preferably you want to always work with a reference. I promise you, this is always the best way to work. Having some good reference to work with allows you to better grasp the workflow and how it goes. So now that we kind of have that general flow in here, let's bring it back, and our neck is not too wide and too broad. He's not a super bulked out character that we're working on here. So with that done, just press Shift R on your keyboard. As you can see, you're getting this grid which scales, which reduces in scale as you go to the left, like with most of the tools here, and as you come to the right, we're increasing the scaling. Now there's a general form. I came to realize that at about 0.03 is about sufficient detailing to work with, or 0.29 is quite nice to work with. You just get just enough detailing for you, that you won't lose your general structure and what you've placed onto there. And with that set, you will left click to release. Now as you can see, nothing has happened until you press Ctrl R, which then applies the remesh. As you can see, it's got some smoothing out, some of that excessive topology there has been smoothed out a bit, and there we have it. You don't have to add this much. I just prefer using this much for detailing, but once again, the thing with these methods is that then you have the exact same amount of detailing across the entire mesh and sculpt. Press Shift S, switch to the smooth brush, and you can see as we smooth out, there is plenty topology that it's working with, which keeps the form. So it's a very dense mesh here, as you can see, but all of these are quads. Now this is a preferable method due to the fact that if you need to retopologize, it won't it won't cause any issues for you because your lines are generally already straight and worked out. Another method for it as well is that, as you can see, I went super high detailed, but it's because I want to sculpt in some nice detailing into it. It's not that necessary. You can reduce it, and that's the nice thing about the remesh method. As you can see, if we scale up and then Control R, we apply, and it doesn't lost too much form, but as you can see, we no longer have this excessively detailed mesh. And once again, you can Shift R, reduce it the more. Let's say 0.6. Let's go 0.6 will be fine. Just for in case anybody that doesn't have like a super powerful machine. Mine isn't either, but you can always do these things in parts and bullion the parts together afterwards. As you can see now, we have even less topology. The head isn't fully blacking out at this distance. You're kind of still seeing that these are quads. And from this point, what we can do to help us in our working, let's actually just save it. By the way, just a trick and something for you guys to remember. Okay, these are other things I'm working on, other projects. Always remember that while you're working on these meshes, with every project, the moment you start it, what you want to do is save the file instantly from the beginning. Any project that you start with, always open save as before you start anything. So then from there on, all you're doing is pressing Control S as you keep flowing. It's just a safer way to work. You won't lose any of your progress while you're going. It's a safer method of working, but because I was using this for tutorial purposes, I wasn't going to save the character, but let me just save it anyway, just so you can see the healthy practice, and I can teach you that as well. There's a good practice in design as well in sculpting. It's always any work you have a backup, save it from the start, and once you're done, duplicate that file and create a backup on an external or whatever, in a partition. Save your files. It's always a good way to work. It'll save you a whole lot of hassle, and never save on the primary disk that you function from. If you have anything that crashes, it'll give you issues, so always save in a partition. It's far best for those of you that are computer savvy. I'm not very computer savvy at all, but that's a piece of advice I can give you. So our general folder that we are working with is here. The training course, we'll save it under the head and save Blender file. You can give it a name. We'll just leave it as Untitled, that's fine. The folder in itself has the name for the file, so it's not going to be a train smash. So now as we go into sculpt in more detailing, we will work with this method here. Add a multi-resolution to it, press subdivide, which will subdivide the mesh as you can see visually, but when you go into edit mode, the topology remains the same. You're still working with the same number of vertices. That doesn't change. It kind of creates the illusion of the detailing. It's almost like when you're baking normals kind of a thing. So it's an illusion of detail without having to actually create as complex a mesh. Therefore you'll be able to work with a pretty decent sized topology mesh, if that makes sense to y'all. So I'll just exit edit mode, just subdivide it a second time so I can add in some really complex detailing. If you want to go for a super realistic sculpt, we'll come in with the sculpt brush, and we will use our clay strips and just add in some form here. Let me first start with the inflate brush. Just get as much volume back as possible so we can sculpt in our eyelids. Press shift, smooth out the top. G brush, just lift that up a little bit so we have a kind of a rough idea of how we want our eyes to look. Then we can grab the inflate brush and reduce once again just the gap here by the bridge of the nose, and separating the cheeks from the nose itself. Add in a bit of volume to our cheeks here again, and just remembering in general how much muscle tissue there is in there, how much of it is fat tissue, and all of that. That will help us with our proportions and help us make a more realistic sculpt. It's always best to work with a reference image, by the way, just so you know. It's always safer, it's always the best way, and you get to learn a lot. And I mean, eventually, factors you'll be able to teach someone else. Isn't that the most valuable thing? We learn and attain skills so that we can not only better ourselves but also those around us. The more knowledge you have, the more you can impart. And there we go. And rocket. And there we have our lip. Yeah, I think we'll go with a lip that kind of stands out a bit more than the other. Now, if you notice, which is quite general with the human form, is that unless you add in some other extensive detailing, like now the chin is a bit sharp there, so it automatically kind of makes her a female. It's a very feminine form. If we add in a little bit of more of a rugged chin, rugged mantle as it's called, the medical term for it, then as you will see, it will kind of automatically start to become more of a male figure and formed in its structure, and make it kind of stand out a bit. Give it a little bit more volume here. Come back with the inflate brush, just add some volume. It's not my favorite of brushes, but it's one of the easiest ways to just quickly fill out. Bring in the clay strips, press shift, and just smooth out some of these edges. And we're getting to more of a male form. And there we go. Okay, then we can take the draw brush, and press that downward. Just have a little bit more of a defining form to our nose, and we'll generally be jumping back and forth while we're sculpting and working through this, just to kind of have a bit of a better flow, never getting bored with which part of the mesh you're working on. So I find it to be best to actually just let yourself jump back and forth through different parts of the mesh, so you can pretty much keep working with endurance and work a lot longer without having to stress too much, without getting bored. Yeah, getting bored is a thing that happens. I don't know if for anyone else it is a problem. I'm sure. I mean, if you're doing the same work over and over, so you find ways to make it a little bit more exciting as well for yourself. And especially if it is repetitive work, if you just, I love doing character design, so I never get bored. But that's just a little trick for you, for when you feel like you're getting bored, just switch to doing something else on the body. So work from the lip, work from the eyes, build in some other detailing, come back, add a bit more detailing to it, and it'll just work out better for you that way. And there we go. Add a little bit of that dip there. Lips are not necessarily the most difficult of things to work on, but practice makes perfect with everything. Just so you know, much the same with me as well. If you feel like your sculpts aren't super perfect each time, and well, they never are, to be honest, there's always a little bit of trial and error, which it's just the way things work. Hold shift, let me just smooth this out. See, because I'm working with just using multi-res, it's a little bit of a schlep because you do end up losing some form of detailing to it. Like I said, it's not really my favorite method of working. I prefer the traditional method. It works better than using this multi-res, but there are artists, I'm sure, out there that would disagree with me, who would actually prefer this method over the other. So each one to their own, We can't all like the same things, like doing things the same way, and that's the beauty of it. You can always learn things from other people and find new ways, more exciting ways to do things, and that'll just, makes everybody's life easier. Let's reduce the strength of the brush. It's kind of reducing my indent a bit more than I needed to by the temple. There we go. Hold shift, smooth it down a little bit, and as you can see, that's with it accentuated. But this is to help you kind of realize and understand the form that you're working with. Working with the nose as well, coming back into the bridge, just smoothing it out a little bit, then choosing exactly how much of a bridge you want it to be, how big you want the nose to be. I mean, what kind of human beings are there's a great range of difference between us, which is not so easy to notice at first, but just a small minutia, something to mention to you. Even when working with the human body, which I'll explain, I guess, a lot better when we get to that part of sculpting, because this will be an entire series of how to sculpt the human body, and we'll do each part in sections, just work step by step. But I'll explain a lot later when we get into the torso, and you'll realize how great a difference you can have in people and our forms in general. So the whole idea of having tight rules of saying this is exactly how you sculpt a human being, I find to be very inaccurate, in terms of I would never teach somebody that way. I think what I can teach you is that there's a general understanding of form, and then a lot of it will come to you just choosing to play, just study people, watch how they are, what forms they have, how interesting some individuals are, different eyes, different forms in terms of their muscle structure, the way they blink, the gaps between their eyes. I mean, there are general rules for how we do all of this, but trust me, it's nothing set in stone. Everybody's an individual. We're all unique, and that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of how God has designed us, I guess. The great universe was aware of what it was doing when it made us. Our great Heavenly Father, as I like to call him. So there we go, and our lower eyelids are done, which is pretty badass, I think. I like it. And let's just hold shift here and smooth it down a little bit. Believe it or not, this is actually my first time working with only remesh from the start. But it's the basic principles. When you understand your brushes and what you want to use them for, it will make your life a whole lot easier. Things like this won't really hinder you much in terms of your work. Know your anatomy, know where you're going to add volume, where you're going to reduce it. All of those things will just add up together to you being a far more skilled individual. Then you'll realize this is all just a tool. These are just tools. So the more you understand anatomy, you understand muscle structure, the easier everything else will be. So then we're going to add our UV sphere, scale it down a little bit. You'll see what we're doing with this just now. Press GZ, put it in line with the eye sockets, rotate on the x-axis 90 degrees, which should turn the, I don't know what to call it, the peak of it, the top vertex of the UV sphere, to face outward, which will be the center of our eyeball, and just align it to the eye socket. So let's just go back into the right view, right orthographic, Alt Z on the keyboard, go into X-ray mode, press GY and position it more or less where it needs to be in terms of that. Front view, GX, position it where it needs to be in terms of that, more or less. Then GX a little bit. So I think I would want the pupil, the iris to sit there, more or less, which looks fairly well centered. There are rules of anatomy for that, so there we can't really do it as we want, but you get, you know, cockeyed people, squint people. May it not offend anybody, but you know, we don't all have this super perfect form. Let me change my brush. Let me move to the grab brush, and let's move this forward a little bit, just so we can have that smooth fall off. As you saw, we were getting this kind of weird artifact thing happening here with the eyeball around the eye socket, and there we have it. And remember that the eyelids are meant to cover the eyeball, so be attentive of the spacing there. And now we occupy that space, and there we go. So this is just so it doesn't look so weird as well while we're sculpting. With it selected, you can right click on the mesh, set origin to the 3D cursor, 3D cursor being right. Let's press Shift C, which would automatically realign it to the center. So overlays, 3D cursor, there's our 3D cursor. Make sure it's in the center of the mesh, it's always there. It's the default starting position. Add our mirror modifier, so you know we can have our second eyeball there. It's very odd when you don't have two eyeballs, but you know, you can go with a little bit of a pirate look if you want. It's acceptable. We're not here to judge. Okay, then we'll take our draw brush, just bringing back in a little bit of a detailing here. Excuse me, we're still attached to the eyes, to the eye mesh. Speaking of which, we can do a little bit of homekeeping. So let's title our meshes eyeball, and this mesh head mesh, and this will just help us stay organized. And we can create a new collection and call this one meshes, and just move all our meshes into this group, which will be perfect. There we go. It's always better to work this way. It's more organized. You won't struggle too much with finding your meshes if you know you have too many layers of things happening. And if you decide to retopologize, which is a whole nother thing as well, very important in character sculpting. No matter what kind of software you get out there, which is perfectly good, if you have like a not so important or pressing job to do, but in general, retopologizing is something you want to do yourself and not use this multi-res method with the remesh that I showed you. This is not a very effective way to work. There's a whole bunch of reasons behind that. And there we go. And just fix in a little bit of our form here. We might have a little bit of a time lapse in some of these, as long as you just follow with it. Have references, as I say, as always. Here we're going for a little bit of a realistic kind of sculpt, so today I am doing a lot of this just from memory and understanding of the human body, but I do have some illustrations that I'm looking at here in terms of, you know, remembering the names of certain parts of the eye and of the body in itself. Like this is generally called the orbital. Something to remember. You had nasal, it's just the basic names, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, and if not, just go study a little bit of anatomy. You'll find it to be worthwhile. Let's increase the brush strength. If you remember, Shift F and drag to the right, and that'll add strength to our brush. Hold Control, and there we can get our nostrils in a lot faster. Alrighty. Then we can reduce the strength of the brush again. Shift F, drag to the left, and just add in our cartilage and that form there. Just hold Control and middle mouse button down, which will allow you to kind of track through the view of your mesh. It'll go back and forth, but along a single plane of axes. So wherever it's positioned, this will move exactly in that plane and axis each time. So if you want to do far more refined zooming of your sculpt, this is kind of a good method to go about it. And there we have it. There's our nostrils. This is a bit too sharp, I'm sure you would agree. So we're gonna hold shift and just smooth those ends a little bit there. Come back with the draw brush, and we're making kind of like a very generic form here. This isn't, as you can see, it's not the prettiest of people, but what you can do with a mesh that's done this way is that you have a generic form. You can save this and always reuse it for other artwork. Now as a beginner, I wouldn't suggest you do it that way. You always resculpt each character. And I mean, even now, I've been doing this for a little while now, I never reuse a sculpt. I generally always I recreate each one. I let each piece of my artwork be an artwork in itself. But you know, sometimes you'll have pressing projects or something where it's like it's not relevant, it's not really that necessary for it to be unique, in which case then by all means reuse your meshes. Oh, okay, here we'll need the draw sharp brush for one. This one actually draws in the form, so you don't hold shift, it will press into the mesh itself. And we can switch back to the inflate brush and just scale it up. Just add a little bit of volume to our lip there, which is not too bad, not too bad at all. Hold shift, just smooth out a little bit of the top of that lip there. We're getting these weird artifacts. Press X, switch to the draw brush again. Let's reduce the strength a bit. I prefer working with a slightly lower strength, low to mid-range strength of brush, not much more than that. It's not really, because you won't really have much control. You know, the brush won't ever add more detail than I needed to. And there we have our general sculpt. Fairly good looking, I would say. Let me know what you think in the comments. I hope you think so too. And there we go. And just increase a little bit of the brow line, the sculpt of the sculpt there, the cranial, and the bone actually kind of has a bit of a protrusion to it all the way through to the center. So you want to add a bit of that form as well. And I'm working, like I said, I'm working with reference as we speak, as I'm teaching you every time. But the reference is an anatomy study. I don't have an actual like human being that I'm trying to generate, or like a sketch. So if you have a sketch or a character that you've designed, it would come in very handy at this point. And there we have our form. Just pretty much all there is to it. Then from there, it's detailing, and how good you want it to look is all up to you. It's about the amount of effort you put in. The more work you'll put in, the better it will be. It's just that simple. Okay, let's add that there. I'm not liking that little dip that it's giving us there. Smooth that, round it up a little bit more. Our volume is back, and there's that strong jawline back and apparent. And then now we can sculpt in our ears. Now my general method, which actually I should have done this before I remeshed, but we can always find ways and means around it. Remember our ratios, general rules of anatomy. The top of the ear will be hitting the corner of what would be your brow line, your eyebrow. So the eyebrow will generally drop to about this height, so this would be in line with the top of the ear. So if you want to have a generally well proportioned sculpt, this is how you want to go about it. And there we go. Whoa. to the bottom of the nose as well. So he's gonna have a pretty big ear. He's got a big gap between those. So, and always remember this kind of stuff. There we go. So we're gonna have a little bit of cartilage that lies beneath the ear at this point. In which case we are now going to, there we have our ear. Just remember, even though the top of the ear goes there, the area that we're masking out is not supposed to, because there's a bit of a lift towards the end of the ear, which will match that exact height that we wanted to, and as well with the bottom of the ear towards the earlobe. We'll Control Z, hold Control, and just increase our ear area here, and just mask off the ends. You don't need to mask off as much as I do here. Let me actually change this fall off into smooth. I think it might be very useful for us, just so it can drag out the mesh, the normals, with a bit of loosening in between, so it won't have any weird artifacts and kind of really super sharp edges where it shouldn't have them. And there we go. And there's our ear top with our smoothed out edges. There we go. Okay, increase the size, take our grab brush and just extrude outward. Front view, more or less the kind of look we want our ear to have, the height, the earlobe will come out a bit as well. So this will all just depend on you as well, and the kind of look you want your character to have. It's all up to you. Okay, Alt M, there we go, and we have our basic form of the ear that's been brought out. And come back with the press X and use the draw brush, and we're just gonna add a little bit of that volume towards the outer cartilage of the ear. And as for here, I think let's use a little bit of the grab brush just to get that earlobe look and feel coming. And always, as usual, work with reference, guys. Work with reference. It's always a good method to apply. Then you can't, your artwork will always be convincing, and it'll be good. It'll be something worth looking at. As well, when there's issues with your anatomy, when it's not, especially, look, if you're gonna stylize, but even then do it in a kind of tactful way that people will recognize it as a style and not that it looks like shite, if you know what I mean. So do your stuff with a little bit of flair to it, but always keep to the basic principles of anatomy, man. That will really help you a lot. Yeah, and by the way, I know this tutorial is not as exciting as some of them are, but I figured, you know what, we're going with a little bit of a formal lesson here. Sorry if I made it boring. It'll be better with the next ones. I promise you. But I want y'all to really get what I'm trying to explain to y'all. Yeah, it's something very good for your skill development. And yeah, that includes me being exciting. It's important for my skill development. So let me make this lesson as exciting as possible for y'all. Bring some good energy into it. I never hated school. I hated boring teachers. So let me not be boring. And there we go. And our ear is getting a little bit of form. And let's bring back, I'm actually surprised that I know the ear fairly well. So this inflate should be coming this way actually. Reduce there. If we're gonna go super detailed at this point, you'd wanna up your subdivisions. So you don't lose too much of detailing. So subdivide once more. And as you can see, we can add a bit more detailing. And we have a little bit of a better idea. Just go all the way up of the kind of amount of volume we're occupying here. And shift, smooth it down, and fix for the draw brush, and just add in a little bit of this volume to the ear. And inflate again here. This should not be going all the way to the edge of the ear. There's a bit of a gap there, and you know, a little bit of a sharp edge to the cartilage. There's like a secondary cartilage line that follows downward, which comes from here. So it's like a sharp, there should be a sharp cut into it, yeah, as it flows. There we go. That's better. That's a lot better. And there we go. Press shift, smooth it down, and I mean, you get the general gist. The rest is all just gonna be up to how much detailing you want to add into it. But essentially, if you followed this tutorial as is, you should have a pretty good looking realistic sculpt ready for use and retopologizing. And yeah, that's about it. So look, from this point you could skip on and go into the next tutorial where we're working on blocking out the torso, but stick around if you want to see a little bit of that little extra detailing that we'll be working on at the end of this. So study your anatomy, pay attention to what needs to be done, and by the way, post a little bit of work, show me what you guys are working on. Let me see the sculpt. If you are following through with this lesson, let me see what you decided to sculpt and make it look like. And there is one thing that's missing to this that we did not touch on, that we did not work on. If any of you can point that out and show me or respond to me in the comments below, you can. Otherwise, send a message in on the Facebook page, which is Few Designs. Yeah, then it'll be nice to hear from y'all. I will leave a link in the comments below as well. Check out the Instagram page. More importantly, you can check out the Buy Me a Coffee page. This will be accessible only to you guys anyway that are in the Buy Me a Coffee. I'll see, maybe at a later stage I'll give it freely for everybody else, but it will always come to my subscribers first. So click subscribe in the Buy Me a Coffee. Help support the channel, help me keep going, help us keep growing, and hopefully coming with far better tutorials. Not that it can get much better than this. I'm just kidding, guys. But yeah, that's your basic method for sculpting a realistic human body, human head. Sorry, it'll be weird if a human body looked like this, isn't it? If it was just a head. Although with animation you can, so what's stopping us? Anyway, okay, if you guys understand what I'm doing here, if you study your anatomy, you'll see exactly what kind of brushwork I'm adding in here. And these are the little things, the minutia, that will change your sculpt from being just the normal and ordinary stuff you're seeing everybody doing to something that, you know, someone will pay attention and be like, okay, you can work on a project with me. All right, okay, cheers guys, have a beautiful day, And as always, GG, God's good. Check y'all on the flip. Don't forget to click like and subscribe to the channel. And don't forget to go to the Buy Me a Coffee page. I will put the link in the comments below. And yeah, God bless.